Hello one more time and welcome back to the final of the 3 faction overviews. This one is going to be in the Wargrove of Woe, which is of course led by DREIKA. If you want to check out any of the other content that I've done this DLC period, there's a playlist link in the description if you want to see that. I'll also put some links in the cards to some other videos like the Wood Elf rework, over 2 faction overviews, some battles, and all the new units. And then I'm also doing a review on the first, so if you want to catch that content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss it. It'd just be fantastic. Now, first things first, we need to talk about the faction effects and the lord effects that DREIKA brings with her. So choosing faction grants minus 10% upkeep for all Dryad, Treekin, and Treemen units, and plus 10% upkeep for all Elf units. As for her personal lord effect, she grants minus 5 public order in a local enemy province, and plus 10% weapon strength, and plus 5 melee attack for Dryads. And her starting units are Giant Wolves, Malevolent Dryads, and Malevolent Treemen. Now, since she's only available in the Mortal Empires campaign, she only has one starting location, and that is the Griffin Wood, which is of course one of the new magical forest regions added with the Wood Elf rework. The first faction mechanic is Elf Glamoring. Now, since she's associated with the ancient elder Codil, she can't recruit certain elven units and characters. All elven units that she can recruit are glamoured, which is just basically a fancy word for meaning they're under a spell. Now, this reduces their combat prowess in pretty much every single way, but it does increase their leadership, so it makes them into more of a chaff unit than your high-tier elite unit. However, to balance this, all tree spirit units and characters are stronger and possess unique skills and traits and upgrade options. So, it's kind of a nice trade-off for the majority of the Wood Elf units that are really good at ranged. They get nerfed, but then everything else gets buffed because, the tree spirit units, they're just kind of alright, but with these buffs, are pretty good. Our other faction mechanic is the Wild Spirits and Beasts, and it's kind of like a Raise Dead mechanic, but rather than raising the dead, you're summoning wild spirits and beasts. Now, depending on the location, she can recruit limited quantities of forest units. These units can't be recruited by any other Wood Elf faction or any other faction in the entire game. So they are cavebats, giant spiders, giant wolves, a feral manticore, and great hawks, and I'll cover all of the new units at the end. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is basically like the Raise Dead function from the vampire counts, since you can recruit them instantly without having to wait a turn to recruit them. It's basically just a way to reinforce your armies as you're going around without having to be in friendly settlements, and I think it's really, really useful. On top of this, as I mentioned earlier, she also has access to enhanced versions of tree spirit units, so all of her Dryads, Treekin, Treemen, Ancient Treemen, and Branch Waifs, they now become malevolent, and the only change that this brings is they'll get Frenzy, and that's literally the only difference. Oh, she can also get Branch Wraiths in a couple of different laws now, so that's pretty neat. She can get Shadows, Beasts, and Life, and the same with Ancient Treemen. Now, the aspects are something that I covered in the Wood Elf rework when I was talking about Durthu, but since it's only a little bit of a mechanic, I'll just tell you it again here since I can go over it quite quickly. Now, Tree Spirit units in the factions, so that's Dryads, Treekin, and Treemen, they can be upgraded with aspects which will suit them to a certain situation. There are 3 of them, and while the exact differences may change each time, they're pretty much laid out like this. You can get more damage but less defense, more defense but less speed, and less armor piercing damage for better chaff shredding. So it's really just, you pick a role that you need to. Say you're going against a lot of armor, you get the armor piercing damage. Say you're going against a lot of chaff, you get the chaff damage. Say you're going against something that does a lot of damage, you get the armor. It's as simple as that. There's nothing to it, you just do it. Now, you can change these aspects as much as you want, as long as you have the money to do it. You do have to pay every single time for every single unit. So, don't go switching them every single turn, otherwise you'll bankrupt yourself. Now, the Court of Adavok is basically her officers, and I've mentioned this in all of the other Wood Elf videos that I've done, and these guys function pretty much exactly the same. There's all sorts of different roles that can be filled by different lords of different types and different levels, and you slot them into there and they get some nice bonuses for themselves, their armies, and the faction. So it's pretty simple. Let's pop them on screen now so you can see all the positions. Now, her research tree has been tweaked slightly. It has a tech that is completely unique to her, so no other Wood Elf faction in the game gets. That's pretty neat. Oh, and on top of this, she also starts out with 1 amber on turn 1, so she can get one of those advanced techs in the middle, one of which is the new one. So, pretty neato there. Now, the world roots, deep roots, and the magical forest have all been covered in the Wood Elf rework overview video, so if you want to check that out, there is a link in the card to watch that. But for now, I've already explained it. I'm just going to assume that you understand what I'm talking about when I mention these things. Now, since she's only available in the Mortal Empires, her campaign goals don't really differ too much from that of the regular Wood Elves. She has to have 500 Athaloran Forest health, she has to win the Defense of the Oak Battle, and she has to complete the Ritual of the Rebirth in Athaloran, and if she wants to go for the long victory, she needs to do the Ritual of Rebirth in 7 other magical forests, so basically all of them on the map. Now, moving on to the new units. First of all, we have DREIKA, obviously. Now, she can use the Law of Shadows, which, it's kind of a mid-tier law. It's got some nice spells in it, but it's not out of this world, so I'd give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's not amazing. Now, on top of this, you can also summon units of Dryads. She also has chunky magical melee attacks with pretty decent weapon damage, even if it isn't all armor piercing. She's super duper tough with 80 armor as well as 20% physical resist. She can stick on the front lines and do a bunch of work and last pretty much forever. She's a really great all-rounder with good casting ability as well as reasonable frontline prowess, so you can't really go too wrong with her. As for her skills, she has all the generic trees you'd expect seeing a Wood Elf Lord tree. She can also pick up plenty of passive and active abilities in the Natures of Vengeance line. As well as this, the top row is full of buffs focusing on her main unit types. Next up, we have the legendary hero KODA, which is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the Elder Ancients. So he's basically just a super old tree man. And this guy is basically like a souped up ancient tree man. He's like, those guys are already pretty good. This guy's even better. Now, he has pretty much unbreakable leadership. You know, when you have anything that's getting near to or over 100, you're never really going to break. He also has 110 armor and 20% physical resist, which, who the hell thought that was balanced? That's a ridiculous amount of defense. He also has massive melee attacks that will hit nearly every time, plus magical, plus armor sundering, and plus there is a stupid amount of weapon damage come behind that melee attack with a bonus versus large, so he can really throw down against anything and everything. He also has better charge bonus than your average tree man, but let's be honest, he's not really a charging type. On top of this, he has access to half the lore of beasts and half lore of magic, and if you ask me, he got the best halves of both of these lores, so incredible caster. He also has a bunch of abilities, both passive and active. Honestly, this guy seems kind of a bit OP. I'm not going to lie to you, it might just be because it's new, but this guy, he can't really be touched. You saw in those battles. You should have seen those battles. He's incredible. On top of this, the quest battle to unlock him, you can do it really early on, and it's honestly one of the most fun quest battles out there. I don't want to spoil it too much, but all I'll let you know is it's basically quite objective based. You know, you have to move your units up to certain places and do certain things to unlock certain buffs that will make your battle a lot easier. Again, I don't want to spoil it. It's really something that you should play. I think you're going to enjoy it. Now, as for his skills, he is a campaign assassin, but let's be honest, a guy like this, he belongs in battles. He has plenty of buffs for nearby units and debuffs for nearby enemy units. His spell trees and his combat trees, they are fairly generic to be honest, but the top row is full of top picks. You can get perfect vigor, massive reductions to the cost of the aspects, and taking attrition with you wherever you go, which is a little bit bananas. As I mentioned, the malevolent units are basically just the standard units, but with frenzies. You get malevolent treemen, you get these guys in the lore of shadows, beasts, and life. Same with malevolent branch wraiths, shadow, beasts, and life, just with frenzy. Malevolent dryads, just get frenzy. Malevolent treekin, they just get frenzy. Malevolent treemen, they get frenzy, alright? All the malevolent units, they pretty much just get frenzy. Now moving on to the wild spirits and beasts units, we are starting off with the cavebats. Now these guys are super similar to fellbats. They have 20 more leadership as well as vanguard deployment. And they aren't undead, but they are still expendable, so you can still send them in and no one's really going to care if they break. Now, I would say to use these guys the same as Fellbats, even though they have a lot more leadership, well, relatively, they're still not going to be able to go against anything too tough. So, you know, send them in clusters of like 3 or 4 to blitz the enemy back lines on range units and stuff, and I think they will do just fine. Giant spiders, disgusting. First things first, let's get that right on the table. These guys are horrendous. They kind of work like an alternate to Warhounds. Now, they are tougher and do more damage, but they are slower than your average Warhounds unit, so they kind of, I don't know, they're in a weird spot where they can go around the enemy backlines and attack them, but they're not fast enough to chase down every single thing the enemy might bring. I'd still leave that to wolves. So these guys, I suppose, charge them into the enemy backs, charge them into the backlines, and they'll still do very well. And of course, they have poison damage, which is my personal favorite thing, so definitely charge them into the backs of the enemy melee lines. Of course, poison damage just makes, I say this all the time, poison damage, it just makes the job of anything that is attacking the unit that these guys are attacking so much easier, because it debuffs them in a bunch of ways. Now, giant wolves are basically big, badass warhounds. They have more health and leadership than your average warhound, but the same shitty melee stats. On the bright side, they carry much improved weapon damage and charge bonus whilst maintaining great speed. So they're still fantastic at zooming around the battlefield, chasing down pretty much anything that isn't flying. But these guys, on top of that, also do some decent damage, even if their melee stats are horrible. Now, use like any other Warhounds unit, tear off the backlines and chase down literally anything. If anything's run away, chase it down and they will just mop them up. Honestly, wolf units evaporate anything that's run away. They can take them out in a matter of seconds, so definitely have them doing that. Now, the Pheromone score, I don't really need to explain this one. It's the same as any other Pheromone score in the game, so I'll just glaze right over that. Finally, we come to Great Hawks, which are pretty much like Great Eagles, but smaller, and there's loads of them. They work similar to Cavebats, but are much better, so can fill the same role with much improved stats and efficacy. So once you can get these guys, I won't get Cavebats, but you don't unlock them at different time. You can unlock them at the same time. So I don't know what the point of Cavebats is, but anyway. But yeah, these guys do actual decent damage, so can even be used to attack some enemy melee units as long as they're still blitz attacking. You don't want to leave these guys in combat too long. They are eagles after all, and if they get surrounded, especially by anything that sounds like large or does too much damage, they will fall very quickly. Yes, I believe that concludes everything you need to know about the Wargrove of Woe and DREIKA. Hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you did. If you would grace it with a like, I would just appreciate that so much. You know how much I love validation. And on top of that, you know, if you enjoyed this video that much and you want to see more content by myself on this DLC, you know, or a review coming on the first, and if you hit that subscribe button, honestly, that would just make my entire week. The validation I would get from that would be phenomenal. Yes, I know I just mentioned it, but the review is coming on the first, so yes, do stick around if you want to see that, because, you know, we've done all this content telling you about everything that's in the DLC, and the only thing you need to know now is, should you buy it? Is it actually any good? And I'll let you know on the first. So thank you one more time so very much for watching, every single one of you. For now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I'll see you next turn.